Voting Dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar. Good afternoon and many thanks for tuning into West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and all around the world on WADR.org. This is Newslink and here are the top stories. Mali bids farewell to the European Union training mission after a decade of military partnership to fight insurgents. Nigeria's Presidential Transition Committee for the May 29th swearing-in ceremony of the president-elect says all is set for the big occasion. The Ghanaian government prioritizes vulnerable populations as it plans disbursement of the first tranche of the IMF loan.
The issue of ensuring that we protect the vulnerable is very clear in the program. So I think we have increased the resource envelope for the school feeding program. We are doubling, I think, the LEAP program.
Mauritania's food insecurity worsens as rain delays prompt warning by World Food Program. Please stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is James Adjapong with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us. We begin the bulletin with a tragic incident in Burkina Faso where a jihadist group has claimed the lives of 45 individuals with several others sustaining injuries. The attack occurred in the southeastern region of Ouaguya, specifically in the village of Nongoufé. According to residents who shared the account with local media, 28 out of the 45 victims were members of the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland VDP. Adding to the distressing event, earlier this week, an armed jihadist group intercepted a public transport bus as it was leaving the town of Nuna in the Bokou-Dumuhun region. 6 individuals were forcefully abducted during the incident. Tragically, 5 of them, including young people, were subsequently executed as confirmed by multiple sources. Reports have been emerging for several weeks regarding the control exerted by jihadist militants over the Nuna-Dedougou axis, raising concerns about the security situation in the area. Still in Burkina Faso, the government this week announced the deployment of judicial police or provosts to join troops during anti-terrorist operations. According to the code establishing the military justice, the provosts have as their attributions the exercise of the missions of general police and military judicial police under the constitution in force. Additionally, the police will carry out investigations, particularly when soldiers commit acts that breach public order or when such acts are committed against them. Issues of rights abuses and violations, torture and mass killing are at the forefront of this decree. In this brief chat, Yusuf Ouattara, a Burkina-based security analyst, first responds to the question of whether Ouagadougou is taking steps to prevent an occurrence of what happened in Moura.
I think actually Burkina is learning from past events, but it's not just from the recent event, which is from the Karma massive killing, and it's not also from the Moura case in Mali. I think it's from previous events in Tawalbougou in the east region, where there have been some civilians killed. And it's also from some cases in the north, from Kain, where some civilians have been killed. And the judicial department of the army noticed that it was difficult to document all these cases. So when it's come to investigate this criminal case, it becomes difficult for the army. So I think that's why they decided when the military are in operation to associate them a legal officer.
Is the Burkinabe government only trying to impress perhaps not just Burkina Faso but the international community? Because one question here is if whether or not Burkina Faso has the manpower and resources to carry out this mission.
Of course, they are trying to respond to the international concern, but there's also some local concern because those who are killed are generally they are Burkina citizens, they have relatives, and those relatives want justice. So I do concur with you that's a big challenge because in terms of manpower, in terms of human resources, we don't have those resources because as you notice, it's a very specialized human resources. You have to be an officer and you have to study law. So those are not in great number in Burkina Faso, in Burkina Army.
Our next report is from Mali, which is about the final departure ceremony of the European Union Training Mission, EUTM. The European mission is departing after 10 years of training more than 5,000 Malian soldiers of all categories and actively participating in improving security in the state since the insurgency began. Abdullahi Hassan reports.
Thursday's event was chaired by the commander of the Boubacar Sadasi Training Center in Kolikoro, Colonel Issa Kaloga, in the presence of senior officers of the Malian Army and representatives of EUTM. Speaking at the ceremony, Colonel Kaloga praised the mission's support in the training of soldiers, the provision of logistics, operational search, leadership and other areas, stating that the Malian armed forces greatly benefited from this expertise. For his part, the EUTM commander, General Santiago Juan Fernandez Diaz-Repiso, declared that the Malian army is now more competent, better equipped and trained to respond to security challenges. He, however, stressed that the complex interface between terrorist organizations and organized crime poses a constant threat to the entire Malian people. There was also a brief memorial for soldiers killed in action during the mission's stay in Mali. The final departure ceremony of the European Union Training Mission officially ends the mission's presence in Mali, where it had stationed over 1,000 troops. Soldiers of the mission are drawn from 25 European countries, including 22 EU members and 3 non-member states. Recall the European Union (EU) announced in April 2022 the cessation of its military training in Mali, while reaffirming that it remains in the Sahel.
Abdullahi Hassan for that report.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
If you are just tuning in, this is Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, and we are streaming all around the world on WADR.org. In Nigeria, the death toll of the attack on a U.S. convoy on Tuesday has risen from 4 to 7 individuals. Among the victims, there were U.S. consulate officials, while the remaining 4 were police escorts. 2 suspects believed to be connected to the attack have been apprehended by the police in Anambra State. Fortunately, no U.S. citizens were killed in the incident. However, 2 U.S. consulate officials are still missing after being abducted by the assailants. The Anambra State Police Commissioner, Echen, attributed the attack to suspected members of the Eastern Security Network, ESN, the armed wing of the separatist group, the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, without further evidence. Remaining in Nigeria, the Presidential Transition Committee, put together by ex-government to organize and implement activities towards the inauguration of the country's 16th president, says all is set for the May 29th inauguration. Chairman of the committee, Boss Mustafa, Thursday gave the assurance during a word press conference where the National Security Advisor also assured of adequate security before, during, and after the swearing-in. WADR's Usman Umar in Abuja reports.
Since the presentation of certificates of return to Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Kashim Shettima as President-elect and Vice President-elect respectively, controversies have raged on both on social and mainstream media platforms regarding the legitimacy of their mandates. Arguments have also been made against their inauguration on May 29. Critics have suggested that the inauguration be suspended pending the determination of the cases before the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. At this conference, however, Chairman of the Presidential Transition Committee, who is also the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, assured that come May 29, the 16th President of Nigeria would be sworn in.
I am delighted to inform you that May 29, 2023 will mark the 7th consecutive democratic transition of power in Nigeria, and on that day we shall be ushering in the 16th President of of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Also speaking, the National Security Advisor, Babagana Mungono, who doubles as the chairman of the Inauguration Security Subcommittee, said everything is being done to ensure a hitch-free investiture.
The committee has concluded all arrangements for the accreditation and issuance of tax passes and identity documents for all security agents. My only advice is that if you have no business in security, you need not be near the vicinity of the program, especially on the inauguration day.
Nigerians, particularly supporters of the president-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, are optimistic that he has what it takes to pull Nigeria out of the present situation characterized by general insecurity, battered economy, rising death profile, and healthcare and education sectors bedeviled by poor infrastructure and incessant strikes by workers. Those of divergent views, however, expect little or no change at all from Tinubu's government, which they say may just walk the same path as the outgoing President Muhammadu Buhari of the ruling All Progressives Congress APC. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
The Gambia's Armed Forces GAF High Command expresses regret over social media reports showing individuals in military uniform removing a banner in Sanyan near the capital Banjul. The banner featured an advertisement for a wrestling competition with Mayor Talib Ahmed Bensouda, a mayoral candidate. This incident occurred barely an hour before President Adama Barrow used the route heading to attend a meeting. GF spokesperson Colonel Lamin Sanyan states that the banner was removed for security reasons and without ill intentions.
So when the soldiers came up to that point, some of their vehicles out of the convoy, some were even trucks. So it was observed that the banner was so low to the ground that it was obstructing even the vision of drivers, including the convoys. Some of them, the convoy vehicles are trucks. So it came up to below the windscreen, blocking the vision of the driver. So it was not even safe to leave it there. So what the soldiers did was, according to information we had, is to untie the banner and put it to one side, so it does not obstruct traffic, and even to render the route also safe and secure for traffic to flow. So that was what happened, and I believe it was at that point that this photo that is trending on social media was taken. And according to even residents around that area, the banner was put to one side of the road. It was not completely brought down. And then the soldiers proceeded to the venue of the meeting, because they realized that the president was virtually almost there. And usually when he's traveling, he comes out around the roof of the vehicle. So that could even pose as a risk to even the president. The banner was dangling. It was not safe and safe for vehicles and even passers-by. So that was why it was just put aside. There was no ill intention on the part of the soldiers to do that. It was just to ensure that the route was safe and secure for people.
Colonel Lami Sanyan is the spokesperson for the Gambia Armed Forces. We cross over to Liberia, where the embattled chairman of the National Patriotic Party, NPP, James Biney, has criticized the development agenda of President George Weah. Biney was the chairman of the NPP that formed the Grand Coalition that brought President Weah to power in 2018, but now supports the leading opposition candidate. WADR's Darlington Pogba in Monrovia completes the story.
James Biney accused President George Weah of embarking on the implementation of substandard projects geared towards misleading the public ahead of the October 10 elections. He wants President Weah to retire, paving the way for the main opposition figure who doubles as former Vice President Joseph Boakai to assume the leadership of the country in 2024.
We try to advise, and the advice will not be heard. And the country is bigger than friendship. The country is bigger than friendship. It's about time that we rescue the country.
However, Maritime Commissioner Len Eugene Nangbe disagrees, saying Weah has done enough to deserve a second term, citing infrastructure development and stabilizing the economy, among others.
Before Mr. President became president, comparatively, how many kilometers of roads have been paved? The road from Ganta, the people, the planting, the banana used to spoil because they are so happy for the road that they can even use wheelbarrow and take their goods to Ganta. So that's the impact. So we got to talk.
Meanwhile, citizens are divided on these claims. Some believe that Weah has done more in 6 years to deserve a second term, but others differed.
Under the George Weah government, we have where fees have been paid for the past 5 years. Free tuition at the state-run universities. We look at road. Under the George Weah government, we have more than 1,150 kilometers of road constructed.
If you read the global indicator on poverty, we are much more poorer today than yesterday. We are much more poorer today than 5 years ago because opportunities are not created by the government.
Observers believe that the October 10 general elections is a critical test for the country's democratic credentials, for which they have called for calm among political actors. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Darlington Pogba in Monrovia.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM. Here's a reminder of our top stories. 45 people, including members of the VDP, killed by a jihadist group in Burkina Faso. Nigeria's Presidential Transition Committee for the May 29th swearing-in ceremony of the president-elect says all is set for the big occasion. The Ghanaian government prioritizes vulnerable populations as it plans disbursement of the first tranche of the IMF loan. Mauritania's food insecurity worsens as rain delays prompt warning by World Food Programme. Still ahead, we have our guest interview and some sports updates. Kindly stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
This is West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM. It's 16 minutes past 12 in our studios here. Remember, you can follow all our discussions on Twitter and Instagram at WADR News and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. The Ghanaian government has reiterated its commitment to prioritize the welfare of the population, especially the most vulnerable. This country's Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, remarked Thursday at the joint press conference between the government of Ghana and the International Monetary Fund on the country's $3 billion bailout package. Our Accra correspondent, Atiarene Bella Lawson, brings more details.
Ken Ofori-Atta told the news conference that his government has taken specific measures to strengthen social protection programs and allocate additional resources to key initiatives. According to the minister, these initiatives are adopted to demonstrate the government's commitment. The increased resource allocation for the school feeding program was highlighted by Ofori-Atta as among the significant developments. On the list also included the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty LEAP program, which provides direct cash transfers to the poorest households in Ghana. The cash transfers assist poor households meet their basic needs and improve their livelihoods. Ghana's Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, says
the issue of ensuring that we protect the vulnerable is very clear in the program. So I think we have increased the resource envelope for the school feeding program. We are doubling, I think, the LEAP program to ensure that the welfare support continues. So no, we should not worry about that. And you have always heard the president being very clear about ensuring the protection of lives and livelihood, and that spirit will continue.
He reiterated that government's commitment to protecting the vulnerable is unwavering and emphasized that there is no cause for alarm. This assurance follows concerns by financial experts and economists who lament the current exchange rate, inflation and rising cost of living, among other factors, as most likely disrupting the intended plans for the bailout package when it was first sought nearly a year ago. The finance minister, however, insists that President Akufo-Addo has made it clear that the protection of the vulnerable groups will not be compromised. Stephanie Rudet, the IMF Mission of Chief for Ghana, at the joint conference acknowledged the significance of social protection programs in the country's economic framework. Reporting for Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Atiewin Imbila Lawson in Accra.
A UN agency says Mauritania is at risk of food insecurity due to delays in the rainy season, which usually extends from June to October. The World Food Programme, in a statement Thursday, warned that more than 470,000 people will be food insecure if the rains are slow to come next season. WFP representative in the country, Kinde Samba, during a press briefing said funds are needed to address the situation. For more details, let's join Oge Obiarika.
The WFP country representative revealed that, in addition to the population at risk, 85,000 Malian refugees in the Embra camp in eastern Mauritania are struggling to meet their basic food needs. The warning in Nouakchott Thursday came a day after the WFP launched an emergency appeal for Mali, particularly for the Minaka region. In this region, attacks by the Islamic State terrorist group for more than a year have created nearly 100,000 internally displaced people. The UN Food Agency explains that it needs immediate funding of $110 million to increase its emergency food and nutritional assistance to vulnerable populations. Malian refugees began arriving in Mauritania in 2012 amid a security crisis in northern Mali. Although Bamako has declared itself ready to welcome these refugees, most of them refuse to return home due to the instability in their country and the deterioration of security and living conditions. According to official data, nearly 31% of the 4 million Mauritanians live below the poverty line.
Oge Oberika filed that report.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The guest interview this afternoon focuses on Ghana as the government recently received the initial portion of $600 million as part of a requested bailout package from the International Monetary Fund (IMF). This injection of funds is expected to play a significant role in propelling the country toward its desired economic recovery objectives. The government expresses optimism about the positive impact this financial support will have on the nation's overall agenda. The Ghanaian government remains steadfast in its commitment to prioritize the well-being of its citizens, particularly those who are most vulnerable. It aims to ensure that the allocated resources are effectively utilized to address the fiscal challenges faced by the country. Our guest, Evans Nuno, will share his insight on how the government can prudently manage this fund considering its economic implications on policies and chart a path forward for the nation's progress.
I think that it depends on what we do with the money and how we manage our own economy, because obviously $600 million isn't something we've never gotten before. In recent times, we had a loan of about $750 million, obviously for various reasons. But this is the first tranche, and I know that what we do with the money, how we use it and how we conduct ourselves would determine whether we will recover faster than anticipated or slower than we anticipate.
So clearly the government has also affirmed that priority would also focus on the vulnerable in society. Does this assurance give a little sense of hope to ensure that there is a bridge of gap between especially the marginalized and financially stable in the society the way forward in your view?
But the government has limited power as to the usage of this money, because from all that we hear, the money is going to be used for budgetary support, loan servicing, interest payments, and things like that. That's the first tranche. So if the government is talking about the vulnerable, I don't know how that comes in. Yes, I know. What I know also is that the free SHS, that's the free education, and all the social interventions the government has been running would continue to run. And those policies have been in place already. But with this money from IMF, I am not too sure if there is any provision that could be used to support the vulnerable in society. Because like I was saying, the first tranche is going for specific things to do specific things. And that I'm not sure has captured the vulnerable in society. So I don't know where they are coming from with regards to this first release.
So finally, the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, has given an early warning that even though the first tranche is received, it will not magically solve all the fiscal challenges the country is facing. If so, what clear guidelines would you suggest for government to properly manage this fund?
Well, you see, we can speak, but the truth of the matter is that there has been some level of agreements or directives in the staff level agreement we had with the IMF. So IMF has a clear roadmap as to how we can use this money. So we can give advice, but I'm not too sure the government has the latitude to decide. Yes, with this money, we may have access to the international credit markets. We may also have access to our normal revenue collection. So with that, I would ask that the government concentrate more on, that is with our own mobilization. As the government goes about the directives of the IMF and all of it, we go about our one district, one factory policy that is supposed to create jobs for the people of Ghana to help the nation to industrialize. I would advise that we give that policy more strength. I would also advocate for the proper implementation of the planting for food and jobs, because that will enhance or boost agriculture. So we have our agriculture equipped, then we come to industrialization, then service would follow. So two major policies I would want the government to strengthen would be planting for food and jobs, and then one district, one factory. I would like that the government gives them all the attention they deserve.
Evans Nunu is an economic expert. And here's Sankole Janko with some sports updates.
Hello there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Burkina Faso beat Mali 2-1 to claim the bronze medal and finished third in the total energies on the 17th Africa Cup of Nations AFCON Thursday night. The Burkinabe enjoyed sweet revenge against the Malians, having lost by a solitary goal when they met in the group stages earlier in the competition. Ousmane Camara put Burkina Faso ahead after scoring from the penalty spot in the first half. Apollinaire Bougma doubled Burkina Faso's lead after the break and ensured the Burkinabe returned home with the bronze medal. Mamadou Doumbouya scored Mali's consolation in the second half, his fourth of the tournament, but it did little to spur a possible comeback, according to CAF official website. And Senegal's national under-17 will hope to replicate defeat of their senior national teams when they take on Morocco in the final of CAF under-17 tonight. And head coach Salif Dia is keen to see his side achieve history when they take on Morocco in the final at the Nelson Mandela Stadium in Algiers. Both teams are playing the final of the competition for the first time, and it is well poised for a thriller. The Triangle Cubs qualified out of the group stages for the first time and reached the final in grand style. Senegal is hoping to cement their place in African football and to create history, having already won the senior AFCON and recently both the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations and the African Nations Championship CHAN. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
Thank you, Sankole, for that sports update. We have come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to our listeners in the Gambia via Hot 104.3 FM, and in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM Lofa County, and in Ghana, Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi. Inyas Bilimu has been exceptional on the console. Many thanks to Mustafa Sek for our Facebook live coverage. Do interact with us via our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am James Adjapong. Good afternoon.
News, talk, music, get it all 24 hours on West Africa Democracy